What if the key to parenting a neurodivergent child isn't about being perfect, but about being present, informed, and empowered with the right tools? Join us as we explore how to foster connection, build confidence, and navigate the beautiful complexity of neurodivergence with compassion and clarity. Welcome to PhD with Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by our guest, Samantha Foot. Parenting beyond the spectrum, raising the neurodivergent children is today's topic. Episode 185 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my motto, and empathy is critical to parenting. In this episode of PhD, Samantha Foot, a neurodivergent board-certified music therapist, positive disciplined parent consultant, and mom to 3 autistic children, shares her powerful journey. With a deep understanding of both the science and soul of parenting, Samantha offers evidence-based strategies, self-regulation tools, and real-world guidance to help families thrive. From decoding early signs of neurodivergence to using music therapy as a bridge to communication, Samantha is changing the narrative around what it means to parent neurodivergent children. Samantha, where in the world are you today?
I'm in Idaho.
Beautiful Idaho. I hope everything goes well. I know that you had a little bit of last-minute problems. That, I guess, is part of the process of raising 3 kids.
Yep.
You're a neurodivergent parent, raising 3 autistic children. What's the most profound lesson your children have taught you about seeing the world differently?
I think they've taught me to know myself better. So I wasn't diagnosed as neurodivergent until I'd been a mom for 8 years. And I was like, oh, I'm a lot like they are. So maybe I have ADHD because they have ADHD too. And so that's kind of what they've taught me, is how to know myself better and to get curious about what they're doing and how they behave, rather than just trying to make them fit into a box that I thought that they should be in.
You've said parenting neurodivergent kids isn't about fixing them, it's about connection. What's a moment when you realized their way of communicating was the real teacher?
Yeah, so my kids all were late talkers, and so we could not verbally communicate with them. Like, I could say things to them, but they couldn't say things back. And so we had to learn to look at what they were doing to really understand what they were trying to communicate. And so that's when I started to learn that, like, all behavior is communication, that we have to look at what they're doing to understand what they need and their wants, and then, just everything that they're trying to do.
So there are some people that are using, for example, humming to self-regulate. How do you cope?
I actually rub my fingers together like this when I realize that I do that a lot, or like when I'm on the computer and I'm not aggravated about something, but I need to regulate because I'm thinking really hard, I'll like rub my lip, and I never realized I did that until, I don't know, it was this year, and I'm like, man, my lips hurt, and it's because I've been working on the computer so much, and I was doing that to self-regulate.
And are your children differently self-regulating, or are they mimicking what you do?
No, my kids are definitely different. I have one that is sensory avoidant, so he's more like me, where we don't need a lot of sensory input. We kind of avoid things. So when he was younger, he would get really upset if he got dirty or if something touched him that he didn't know about, or if someone held him. And so his way of regulating when he was younger was just to like lay down by himself and not have anyone touch him, not have anyone talk to him or anything like that. And then my second son is a sensory seeker, and so he regulates by moving. And if you watch him watch a movie, is the funniest thing, because he'll start off sitting down and then he'll be doing a headstand, and then he'll be laying down, and then he'll be in some other like contortion, I don't know. And so yeah, just seeing the difference between them has been interesting. And then my daughter uses music a lot, and actually my second son uses music a lot too, to self-regulate. When both of them are having issues, they'll grab this little stuffed animal that sings to them, and they'll calm down that way.
That's a beautiful way to self-regulate. So let's go into music therapy, which is your superpower. How does rhythm or melody unlock connection when words fall short? And what's your favorite miracle moment using music?
Yeah. Oh man, there are so many different moments. So just so everyone's aware what music therapy is using music to accomplish non-musical goals. We work on social skills, communication, emotional, motor skills, cognitive skills, all those different things. And the rhythm is really, it helps regulate your body, because your body runs on rhythm. So your heart rate, your breathing rate, all those different things runs on rhythm. And so rhythm can really unlock things in your brain. An example of this is in neurologic music therapy. I don't personally work with these kinds of patients, but if a patient has a stroke, then, they're like shuffling along and they can't really walk that well sometimes. And you can actually use rhythm to cue their brain for the motor movements of walking and other things, and they're able to walk like just in a typical way. And so that's really cool. It's research that's coming out, and there's also been research done for like decades, but it's just cool to see the new research coming out. But with me, I work mainly with kids and adults with autism. And one of my favorite stories is this kid was working on social skills. He said he wanted a best friend. That's all he wanted. He was 7 years old. He said, everyone else in my class has a best friend and I don't have a best friend and I want one. He's like, I just want a friend. And so we worked on understanding like flexible thinking. And so I had him tell me, like, we would write a song about emotions and we'd focus on a different emotion every time. And for example, we'd do happy, and I'd say, okay, what does happiness taste like? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And he's like, well, happiness doesn't taste like anything. And I just said, if you had to imagine it, what would it taste like? And so we wrote a song based on that was improving his flexible thinking, so that when he was in a group and something didn't go the way he thought it would, he'd be able to have that flexible thinking to know that it's okay. Things can change, things can be different than I think they can be, and that's okay. And then we also did improvisation, where I would ask him to play different instruments in like a happy way or a sad way. And he had a really hard time with that at first, but then he was able to do it more as time went on. And then after a few months, he came to me and he said, yeah, I have a friend. And that was one of the greatest moments in my music therapy career, just because he was so excited he had a friend.
Well, I think it's also very interesting how you boosted his creative juices by bringing some sensory observation and create something out of, something difficult, what he was struggling with. And apparently music, that's what scientific research tells us, music activates 90% of the brain, including emotion and memory centers. So I bet you have navigated judgment from others. Why do you do what you do? And 87% of autism parents face unsolicited advice. How do you turn criticism into compassion for yourself and them?
I rely on education. I am very research focused. And so, for example, we might go somewhere and someone will say something to me like, we went to a dinner once and my kids didn't eat. They only ate like a roll and some meat and some raw carrots, and that's all they ate. And the people there were like, aren't you going to make them eat more of the food that we're serving? And I'm like, research shows that kids, with autism, they don't like unfamiliar environments. They don't like really being around a lot of people. And so we're around a lot of people right now. We're in an unfamiliar environment, and my kids are already picky eaters. So I'm not going to make them eat something that they don't like just because we're at a dinner where people are serving it. And so also people tell me that I should use punishment a lot. And research shows that punishment does not, first of all, it doesn't work. And then it just creates a shame-based relationship where the kid feels shame instead of feeling supported. And so if we can use the positive parenting strategies, then it shows that you're more connected to your kid and long-term behavior actually increases. Long-term behavior improves, not increases. And so, yeah, I just rely on that and then realize that people don't know what they don't know. And so they're just trying to be helpful in the way that they see fit. And so that's how I kind of turn that around.
Have you been raised this way, or was it a different upbringing for you?
I was not really punished that much when I was a kid. I mean, I definitely had consequences, but my parents were more of like, let's solve the problem. I don't think I was ever grounded or anything like that. I was also terrified of getting in trouble, so I didn't really get in trouble a lot. But my parents were really great at solving the problem, not focusing on like a punishment necessarily, but just natural consequences would happen. For example, one time I accidentally backed my dad's truck into my mom's Suburban and hit my dad's other truck at the same time and took out a window. And my parents were like, well, we have to fix the cars, so what are we going to do to fix them? And now we might not get to go see your cousins for Christmas because our window's missing and it's the 23rd day of December. And so those were all like natural consequences that would happen, but they didn't say, you're grounded for 2 weeks for doing this.
And what got you inspired and interested in the research?
I have always been into research. Like when I was in 8th grade, they said I could do a speech on anything I wanted to, and I dove into the research about depression and did a speech about depression when one of my classmates did it on like her opinion on boy bands. And so I don't know, I've just always been super interested in research and wanting to know like what science says is working. And I also take into account like new things that are coming in that maybe doesn't have all the research to back it, but the research that is there is like promising.
As a child behavior strategist, what's the most misunderstood behavior in neurodivergent kids, and how do you reframe it for exhausted parents?
Yeah, I would say that meltdowns due to sensory overwhelm or just sensory stuff in general is the most misunderstood, because people don't take into account that if you go somewhere and the lights are too bright, it's too noisy, it's too cold, or it's too hot, like as a person, if you get overwhelmed with all those senses, you're going to have a meltdown because your body doesn't feel right. And so just educating parents on sensory needs has been one of the big things that I've been focusing on. That, if your child has a meltdown every single time you go into the store, maybe they need noise canceling headphones, maybe they need sunglasses, maybe they need, I don't know, just if it's too cold, a sweatshirt or something like that. And so just educating parents on the sensory needs, the sensory system, how it might be different in kids with autism or ADHD, and those kinds of things.
Mm. Educating parents is one thing, but how do you normalize humming or different behaviors that are normally not accepted by the community?
Yeah, it's just talking about it. So I talk about it with everyone. I talk about it, like on my Instagram, on my podcast, all of that, and just trying to normalize it as much as possible because, like I said before, people don't know what they don't know. And so they might think that a person that's humming who is trying to regulate themselves so they don't have a meltdown is actually just someone who's trying to be annoying or something like that. And that's not at all what they're doing. They're just trying to regulate their bodies so that they can stay where they need to be. And it's just educating everyone, I guess, about it, just talking about it and letting people know that this is what's going on.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you can look up Samantha's work on Instagram. You can reach out to her if you need some consultancy. Fun fact, stimming, like hand flapping, releases pent-up energy. It's a natural pressure valve. You emphasize self-regulation for parents first. What's your go-to practice to stay grounded when sensory overload hits?
Ooh, it depends what I'm overloaded with. If I am feeling very emotional, which is the normal for me, I will listen to music. I listen to country breakup songs, and it's very concerning to my husband because he's like, "Are you okay? Are we okay? What's going on?" But that, I don't know what about them just calms my body down, but singing them just calms me down, and I love it.
Good. And how somebody who doesn't know how to self-regulate it, what they can do or try, or what resources they can look for to find the best formula to self-regulate?
I would just get curious. You can Google things like self-regulation strategies online and then just look through them and pick something that you think might help you and practice that before you get into a meltdown or before you need that strategy. And then if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work and you try something new. But getting curious is my biggest advice. Just get curious and try new things.
And what about your children, Samantha? How did you discover that your children are neurodivergent?
It was actually when my oldest son was 2 months old. He wasn't smiling or making eye contact. So the doctor said, "I think you might have autism." And I was like, well, that's a little early to be diagnosing that because this was like 10 years ago. But we just kept an eye on it. And then he wasn't meeting milestones. There were other signs. He was speech delayed. And so when he was like 2.5, we got him assessed and he was diagnosed with autism. And then I thought my middle son had ADHD, so we got him assessed. And they're like, he has ADHD and autism. And then with my daughter, she didn't have any of the signs that are like typical, but she was working with an occupational therapist because she had some balance issues. And her occupational therapist actually said, "I think she needs to be assessed for autism." And so that's how we got all three of them assessed, was just completely different signs. And my first son was pretty typical. He had the pretty typical signs of autism, but the other two, I was really surprised by their diagnosis.
And did you have some suspicion, or was it always the doctors who told you?
Yeah, I was concerned when my son wasn't smiling or making eye contact, or really he didn't like to be held, anything like that. So I was like, well, maybe he has autism, but it's still really early to diagnose that. And so then I just kind of kept an eye on it. And then in my husband's family, there are a few people that are diagnosed with autism. So I knew there was that genetic link there. So yeah, I brought it up to the pediatrician actually, because we got a new pediatrician after the initial pediatrician because we changed insurances. But yeah, so I brought it up, and I was the one to really move things along with his diagnosis.
And schooling, that's probably another challenging moment when children are being let go to the big open world, and there is so many elements you have no control over. How did you prepare for that? And is there a bulletproof preparation process?
I wouldn't say there's a bulletproof preparation process, but I will say having open communication with the school has been fantastic. And so that's been the number one strategy that I use, is just telling the school about your child. Like before my son went into kindergarten, I said, hey, he has these things going on. This is where he struggles. This is where he shines. These are his strengths. And we've just always had open communication. And then when he started struggling in school, we, got an IEP evaluation, and now he's on an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. And he's been able to get the things that he needs. But if you go into the school with the attitude that they're not going to help you, they're the enemy, which a lot of people do, that's not going to get you anywhere. Just go in with a feeling of collaboration, that you want to collaborate with the school and say, like, I found that things that work well for my child are blah, 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 blah. And then you can say, can this work for you in the school? Can you try this in the school? Is it feasible? And not saying, well, this works for my kid, so you have to do that. Just going in with a sense of collaboration is always better than demanding things or saying you're going to sue them if they don't do things. But definitely there comes a point where if the school isn't doing what they're supposed to do, then you need to take extra steps. But just open communication and collaboration to start with.
What do you mean by extra steps?
So there are some schools, luckily, I have not had this experience in my kids' school, but there are some schools that say they're going to do things and then they don't do the things in the IEP. They don't do, the things that they need to do to help the child be successful. And that's when you need to escalate the situation. So some people get an advocate to go in with them to the IEP meeting. Some people get a lawyer. Some people actually sue the schools and say, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, so we're going to force you to do what you're supposed to do. But all those things, if you're having trouble with the school, I would start with an advocate. I know in the Boise area, there is a nonprofit that they have advocates that will go with you to your school meetings. And so start there. They can tell you your rights. They can tell you what, your child is supposed to have, and they can help you through that process. And usually that's enough, but sometimes you need to get a lawyer. Sometimes you need to do other things to escalate the situation.
Samantha, you're on both sides of the process because you're working with educators, but also you are educating parents, educating children. So let's get into the thing of some parents just don't have even time to think about how to help their children. Did you have these moments of, I've tried, but there is no cooperation?
Yeah, so with my own son, he has pathological demand avoidance, which is just a thing where when you get demands placed on you, so when you're asked something to do, even if it's a small thing like someone asking, how are you today, that's seen as a demand and they go into fight or flight. And so my son had that severely, like he's always had it, but it got way worse when he was in third grade. And I did not know what to do. And so I had to go get new resources and look into things like that. to figure out what to do. But it was so hard because I was just at a loss. I wanted to help him. I would have done anything to help him, but I just didn't know what to do. And so like PDA North America was a fantastic resource that just helps you understand more about PDA. And now that I've learned more about it, I can educate the school about it so they can help him, because school was like his main stressor, and just the teacher that he had was not the right fit for him that year. And so those are the kinds of things that I had to do to learn more about it. And then I was able to help him. We finally found something that worked. But yeah, I was just at a complete loss, and I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm exhausted.
Well, I was actually thinking about some parents who are, oblivious to the problem, and they are not cooperating with educators. I'm sure you had these moments of, I can't really push any further because I don't have cooperation from the parent, and the child is trying its best, but really it's a matter of practicing at home as well, right?
Yeah, so there are times when parents will say, my kid is fine, which kids with autism and ADHD are fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. But they're saying my kid isn't any different than any typical developing kid, and they don't acknowledge the differences that are in kids with autism. And so that can be really hard because they're treating them like they don't have sensory dysregulation issues, they don't have communication differences. And so my goal is just to say, like, hey, what if we tried this? And so just asking questions instead of being like, you need to accept that your kid has autism and that he might function a little differently. I don't go in with that approach, but I'm like, what if we tried this? What if we tried this? And I found that asking those types of questions goes further than just saying, well, I think you should do this, and I think you should do this, and like telling them what to do.
Position of empathy is critical again. Now, let's go into something that really helps any children, not just neurodivergent, a routine. How did you create a routine, and how did you work around when you have 3 children with 3 different sensory problems?
Yeah, so visual schedules are fantastic, and I tell my kids what they need to do, but they get to pick the order. And so I actually just did a podcast episode about this, that all my kids have ADHD and autism, and there are different needs for both. And so ADHD is, like the inattentiveness, the impulsivity, need for new things, spontaneity, and then autism is the need for the same routine, not being able to switch between tasks, not liking new things, not liking unexpected transitions, all of that. And so how we do that is, like in the morning, they need to get dressed, get their shoes on, eat breakfast, brush their teeth, all of that. And so I tell them, okay, we need to do these things. And, you make a visual schedule. You can do it with pictures or words and say, we need to do these things. You get to choose what order you do them in, but we need to get them done. And so like it helps their ADHD brain and their autism brain both get the needs met that they need, because they have the pattern, like a routine, which is the same, but then they also have the flexibility to change the order if they need to change the order of it that day.
And what about the sibling dynamics?
Sibling dynamics are hard because, especially when they have different sensory profiles. So my one son is super loud. He's a sensory seeker. And then my other son is a sensory avoider. And so when the sensory seeker is being loud and just rambunctious, and then the sensory avoider is like, will you please stop? I can't handle it anymore. And so that's when we have the sensory corners that they can go to. So my older son can go to his room. He can be alone. He has his own room for that purpose, that he just needs alone time. And then we have a playground outside that my other son can go, and he can run around on the playground, he can slide, he can swing, he can do whatever he needs. And so I also teach them about each other and say, well, okay, he needs movement right now and you need quiet right now. So how can we help each other? How can we live together and help each other? And so those are some of the things that I do.
People say they sleep like a baby. Usually they don't have one, as Leo Bork said. So as a parent, I'm sure you're really sometimes at a crossroad and you suffer from fatigue. And how do you self-regulate when the strings are very short and it's overwhelming?
Yeah, so I try and get as much sleep as I can. I've been going to bed earlier, and then just having some time in the morning before they wake up, I found has helped me a lot. And so I try to go to bed a little bit earlier than I normally used to, and then wake up a little earlier so that I can be up and be able to do things before they get up. But then the opposite could be true too. Like if you like staying up at night, like stay up and do the things that you need to do so you can, like, I read or watch TikTok videos or play the piano, or there's so many different things that you could do. But in the moment when sometimes, you know, my temper's short, I always have to pause and breathe before I react and say, okay, why are they doing this? Let's look at the communication behind their behavior, and that helps me not react in an angry way and a more empathetic way. Like, this is why they're doing that. So they're not doing it to annoy me. They're just doing it because that's what their body needs right now, or they got overexcited or something like that. And so just pausing and breathing in the moment and really thinking through those actions before I react has helped me.
Did you know that Albert Einstein and Emily Dickinson are believed to have been neurodivergent? How does their legacy inspire you to nurture your children's unique brilliance?
Yeah, I talk a lot about this, and just letting your kids find their strengths, like be curious about what their strengths are, and they might not be what the typical strengths are. So if your child doesn't go to college, that's okay. Maybe, you know, they'll be an entrepreneur. Maybe they'll go into the trades, or maybe they'll do something. Like, people are so concerned that their kid is never going to be independent because they don't follow the traditional path. But I think that's true for any kid. Like, kids can still be successful and not follow a traditional path. And that's just what I have to remind parents of, and what I remind myself of, is that, well, okay, my kid's not like a superstar student. That's okay. He has a brilliant brain for Legos and building things and architecture and all of that. And so just getting their strengths, finding their strengths, and really helping them grow those, I think, is what is most important.
That's beautiful strategy, Samantha. And I also love that story about a boy who wanted to find a friend. The term autism comes from Greek autos, which is self, coined in 1911. How do we shift from isolated self to connected community?
I think just recognizing the differences between neurodivergent communication and neurotypical communication, and just letting everyone be themselves. So, for example, I heard this thing that says, you'll never be successful if you don't make eye contact. Well, eye contact for a lot of autistic people is physically painful. And so I can guarantee you that they're not listening to you if they're making eye contact. And so just recognizing the differences in communication, I think, is the most important, and trying to understand each other. So neurodivergent people have to learn about those differences as well as neurotypical people. It's not all on neurodivergent people. I know that a lot of neurodivergent people get hours and hours and hours of training in how neurotypical people think and communicate, but I think it's also on neurotypical people to understand how neurodivergent people think and communicate, so everyone can just be themselves and be together.
Inclusivity wins. You've
Yeah.
called neurodiversity a beautiful spectrum. What's a societal norm you'd love to dismantle to make space for that beauty?
Eye
Apart from eye
contact.
contact. Eye contact is
Yeah. That's my number one. And then the second one is just recognizing that stemming is perfectly fine, and that if someone is stemming, like they're trying to regulate their body and to stay where they are, they're not trying to bother anyone, and just letting people do what they need to do to maintain their own self-regulation.
mm. As Raw Truth said, my kids taught me to find joy in tiny victories, like a shared glance or a new food tried. That's where magic lives. Where is your magic with your children? You said one is doing Lego.
Yeah, my second son is really awesome at creativity. Like his stories that he writes are amazing. And then my daughter is just super creative too. She has an awesome imagination, and just the stories that she comes up with, like she's not writing yet, but she'll also make up songs. And like one time she made me and my mom and my sisters like stand in a line, like we were in a choir, and she's like, okay, you sing this and you sing this and we're going to sing this song. And so just she has those talents already, even though she's like not even in kindergarten yet. And so I just love seeing those kind of things come out in my kids, where other people might see their quote unquote deficits. Like I really try and find their strengths so that we can encourage those and grow those.
Strength is one thing. What's other unexpected gift of parenting neurodivergent children that no one talks about?
Yeah, I think just seeing the world through their eyes, like they're and the things that they come up with, so they are very, very literal, and I don't realize the things that I say until they repeat it back, and they're like, well, you said this, and I was like, I did say that, but I meant this. They're like, well, why didn't you say that then? And so I really just like seeing how they take in the world and just seeing how they interpret things.
Hmm. What advice would you give to someone who is newly diagnosed?
I would say look into local resources. For example, in Idaho, there's a Facebook group called Idaho Autism Moms, and just get information and support from other parents in your area, I think is the best thing that you could do. And then, there's so many resources out there and therapies that you can do, but really trying to narrow down what therapies you think will be best for your kid, because if you put them in all the therapies, they're just going to get burned out. And so just looking into those different resources, is there state assistance like the Katie Beckett program for Medicaid? Like looking into the Facebook groups. Like I have a neurodivergent parenting community, so you can do paid options, just different things like that. Just get support first.
Parenting, well, let's go into another great quotation prepared by Racy. Parenting without a sense of humor is like being an accountant who sucks at math, as Amber Dusik said. So what's your humorous approach to your children? Share with us some funny stories.
Yeah. When my son was younger, he did not like music. He just didn't like it at all. But then one day he discovered the song Bad Boys, the theme song for Cops, and he would run around the house just scream singing that song. And then one of his aunts, he would be like, yeah, we're bad boys together. And he was like 3 years old and just saying like, I don't know, it was just so funny. He was just like, I'm a bad boy. And I was like, okay. And it just made me laugh. But yeah, that's just one story that I have. And then My other son, he always has to wear a patch because he has a congenital cataract in his eye. And so it was so hard to get him to wear his patch when he was little. And so I'd put it on, and then he'd come out, and his patch would be like on his leg, but he'd be covering his eyes like this, like I couldn't see that he wasn't wearing his patch. And so he would just like come out and be like, just walking throughout the house, and I'm like, I can see you. And he's like, oh man. So anyway.
If you could engrave one message on the heart of every parent raising a neurodivergent child, what would it be?
You're doing the best you can, and that is all that matters. A lot of parents are so hard on themselves, especially when their kids are older and they realize the things that they should have been doing when their kids were younger. They're like, oh, I wish I would have known this. I wish I would have known that. But just know that you're doing your best with the knowledge you have. What you don't know, you don't know. And when you learn it, you'll do better.
Absolutely. The neurodiversity movement began in the 1990s to celebrate differences, not cure them. Now, we always talk about women in technology, women entrepreneurs. You've been an entrepreneur yourself. What advice would you give to females to help their career or their entrepreneurial journey?
I would say find a mentor and just get started. You'll make mistakes along the way, and that's okay, but I have always had someone that I could go to talk to about business, and I have made plenty of mistakes, but just find someone to talk to and just get started, and you'll learn as you go.
We talked about embracing differences or quirks, but there are some soft skills or human skills or career-driven should probably have. What, in your opinion, these are?
I would say the first one is to learn to delegate. Live in your zone of genius, but delegate anything that can be, because you'll burn yourself out very quickly if you try to do everything that needs to be done to run a business. And then the next one is communicate. Just say what you need, say what you mean. Don't beat around the bush. Like if you're trying to communicate with someone, just be clear in your communication. Also have empathy, but be clear in what you're trying to say. And then collaboration. Look for opportunities to collaborate with other entrepreneurs or other businesses, nonprofits, and just collaborate with other people.
And what's your strategy for problem solving?
I talk it out. I am definitely a verbal processor, so I talk to my husband and I just solve the problem as I'm talking. And like I'll ask for his opinion sometimes, but most of the time I just need to just talk it out so that I can think about what I'm trying to solve.
I'm a verbal processor as well. That's a beautiful name for it, because once we talk it out, we just feel better, don't we? I mean, it's a unique female trait, but I have to tell you that I had somebody in my life, I'm no longer with this person, but during one of the talk it out session, he just said, "I've had enough, shut up."
Oh no.
But my strategy for problem solving was to divorce this person.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go into some positive thinking. None of us are able to achieve success without some help along the way. Is there a particular person who you are grateful towards who helped you?
Yeah, definitely my husband. He's been a rock star. When I first started my business, he was very nervous. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Everyone in my family owns a business. My mom and dad both have 5 brothers and sisters, and they pretty much are all entrepreneurs. And my husband came from a family where his dad worked for the same company for 30 years and then retired. So he was very, very nervous, but he let me do it, and he has supported me all along the way. Except the other day, I asked him something, and he was like, I don't know, what's your career? And I was like, oh, the audacity. But it was fine because he was totally right. Like, why should he give me ideas for something that I was asking when he has no idea what I was even like? He has no idea how to solve what I was like asking him about, but it was just really funny. But he's always been a huge support to me.
Oh, we are extending our appreciation to your husband. I hope he's gonna watch this show. This is a pre-recorded show, ladies and gentlemen. No live questions today, but I have another question from our female members. Are you working on any exciting new projects right now?
Yeah, I'm revamping my parenting community for parents raising neurodivergent kids, where I have not had a lot of music stuff in there before, and people keep asking about it. So I'm putting more music strategies in there and kind of embracing that part rather than keeping the music therapy and the parenting stuff separate. We're combining it.
Fantastic. Tell us about that music therapy part. Why is it important?
There's just so many ways that music can help with like emotional regulation, skill acquisition, that kind of stuff, stress reduction, and you don't even have to be a trained musician to get the benefits. And so I've just always been talking about like all the ways that music can help you, but then I realized I wasn't talking about it in the parenting community, which didn't make sense to me because once again, you don't have to be a trained musician to get the benefits from music. You just have to engage in music. And so I want to get that out to more people.
And I've heard about music that we've heard in our childhood has really huge benefit. Can you bring us some insight into that?
Yeah, so they found that older adults who, like they might be having memory issues, Alzheimer's, whatever, if you play music from their like late teens, early adulthood, it will actually bring back memories, and they can engage better when they're listening to those songs because I don't know why, but they're just that music from that time period is like the most influential in their lives. And so I just think that's super cool that you can engage with people in that way by playing that music, and they're able to like come back to life kind of.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen a beautiful video of a woman with Alzheimer who heard some beautiful song, and she used to be a ballerina, and all of a sudden her whole body started dancing with the music because she remembered that moment when she was encapsulated by music and she was in her element. let's go into Eleanor Roosevelt, who once said, "Women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are in hot water." So in life, how are you in hot water, Samantha? How are you brewing?
So right now I just feel like I'm in parenting hot water, just trying to navigate parenting, and my kids are getting older and puberty and all of that. In business, I actually had a preschool that I opened in 2021, and it lasted a year, and then we had to shut it down for various reasons. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. But I learned through that I'm not a failure. Like, I tried something. We didn't have the right space. I didn't have enough staff to keep the kids safe. You know, like, this was kids with disabilities. And so I learned a lot through that experience, and just like, if I want to do it again, how I would do it different next time, and that just because you try something and it doesn't work out doesn't necessarily mean that you're a failure. It just means you had the courage to try and it just wasn't right, and that's okay.
What's the number one book you can sit and think, "Oh, I wish I read it before I started my career"?
Atomic Habits by James Clear. I've read a lot of books about how to make habits, how to like stick to a routine, but I don't know if you know this, but people with ADHD, they don't really have habits. Like, their brain can't make habits. And so it's funny that the title is Atomic Habits, but this book, like, I feel like it was made for people with ADHD. Just the way that he described things and the way he gave different strategies just clicked in my brain and has helped me so much.
Excellent. You're not the first person to mention that book. Now let's imagine that you could meet anyone in the world to have a private breakfast with. Who would it be, and where would you choose to meet?
I don't know of a specific person, but right now I'd really love to talk to someone who has a successful therapy business, and I would love to talk to them about how they're navigating that and how they're just putting all the pieces together and making a profit and all of that. And I would love to talk to someone who does that. And then we would go to the Griddle in Meridian because I love that place so much. It's my favorite.
The Griddle in Meridian, is it in your town?
Yeah, it's in my town.
Excellent. That sounds excellent, and I hope somebody will reach out after this call and will help you, Samantha. Can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote, and how did it change you?
Dr. Matt Zakreski was on my podcast, and he said, "Get curious, not furious." And he was talking specifically about your kids, and when they do something, get curious, not furious. But I think that can be adapted to so many different situations in life. Like, when something happens, just get curious. Don't be furious at first. Just get curious and try to understand what happened.
Excellent. Be curious, stay tuned for next episode. We will be releasing it every Wednesday. And that's it from episode 185 of the PhD livestream. Thank you so much, Samantha. To stay updated and ensure you never miss another positivity hack delivered, follow Woman on It and turn on notifications to be alerted once a video has been released. And as always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking Only and goes, "Look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder." Today is your day to hug the future, hug the positivity you want. Thank you.